Hello, everybody. Welcome to Reserve Seating. We are doing part two of the Sell Bagel Royale episode. So we are rejoined by Patrick. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you guys?
Good, good. So, Patrick, you saved The Favorite, and Rob, you saved Sucker Punch from me selling them to half-price books. After watching both of them, and I want to have the conversation, I put them both back in the sell bag. So we're gonna start with The Favorite,
Yes.
directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, with Olivia Colman, there it is,
There it is.
Emma Stone,
Ah.
and Rachel Weisz. So
Don't forget my favorite freak boy, Nicholas Holt.
and Rob's favorite freak boy, Nicholas Hoult.
I was kind of like a little cold on the favorite the first time I saw it back when it came out. Um,
Hmm.
but Yorgos has since like unlocked for me, so I actually liked it a lot more on this viewing.
I consider myself a fan of his. I was a fan of his because of Killing of a Sacred Deer. That was the movie that unlocked it for me. And then when I saw The Favorite, I wanted to love it and I just liked it.
Mhm.
And I kind of have the same feeling this time where I prefer Killing of a Sacred Deer, Poor Things, and Kinds of Kindness, but The Favorite is still good. The movie's kind of notable because it sort of kicked off his ongoing collaboration with Emma Stone, and he uses her in really interesting ways that no other director at that up to that point had really done with her. Um, Playing like darkly comedic performances and things like that, and she kind of has like an inner freak that he unlocks.
I'm a big Lathamos boy. I love Yorgos. I know he's exhausting for a lot of people, and I know even I am hit or like I don't even really want to say I'm hit or miss. I think I like all of his movies, but I was watching this today in light of everything we've seen since The Favorite, and thinking a lot about how this is like easily his most like crowd pleasing movie. Like it's his most like straightforward kind of just like here's a kind of comedy of manners with these very beautiful people that everybody recognizes. Like there's stuff in it that's subversive and interesting, but when you compare it certainly to like Kinds of Kindness, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's where you're really starting, or even Killing of a Sacred Deer, which is this really like sort of an emotionally intense, sort of brutal movie. Um, I was watching it today in light of everything else and thinking like I really like the Emma Stone of it all. It's nice to see like a beautiful young actress who like has played beautiful young actress parts now get to have that in her 30s. Like it's kind of like Dunst where she kind of did the same thing where she did like it girl roles for a while, but then she found directors that knew how to like, mess her up really well.
They're both crazy beautiful, is I think
They're
what you're
both
getting.
crazy beautiful. My thing though, like on top of being a Yorgos guy, I am such a like this to me is like such an Oscar Wilde, Jonathan Swifty kind of like poking fun at the upper crust of like Victorian society. I know it's Queen Anne literally, so it's not
Mhm.
Victorian, but you know what I mean, like the sort of upper crust of royal society. That speaks to me regardless of the Yorgos stuff, but the Yorgos stuff on top of it just makes it better.
Yeah, I really like this subgenre of movies because it's whether it's The Favorite or Marie Antoinette or Barry Lyndon.
You're
I
right.
just
Barry Lyndon's a great example.
Yeah, it's just nice to sort of take in all the art direction and the
Mhm.
costumes, but it feels like, and maybe it's just I'm using examples by three like master filmmakers, but it feels like a subgenre that it's easy to mold like contemporary issues into
Sure.
and turn kind of make the historical less stodgy and make it seem very vibrant and kind of, up to date. One of the things that I was really taken by on this viewing was just like the last image. Because
Mhm.
it's almost like the movie draws you into like a surprise way it ends, where it's like on an unusual beat that the movie closes. And it's like this shot that's like just kind of methodically held, and then they superimpose like the rabbits over it or the bunnies over it. And it gives you the time to kind of like really process, like along with the character in real time, like what this all means and like how much they fucked up. I think it's the mo one of the most interesting endings I've seen in a recent movie. And I've just, if anything, that kind of like carries me off after the movie's over, being like, oh, that was really good. I really like it.
I think it should come out of the cell bag, but that's me.
Yeah. All right. Hold on. We saw things come go into the cell bag in the last episode,
Oh,
but now we have to see things come out of the cell. Dun, 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 dun.
there
There
we
it
go.
is.
It is saved. But that's a perfect segue for a second movie, Sucker Punch. I remember Patrick doing an episode with, was it with JB?
That was with Doug.
With Doug? Okay. It was pre my time on F this movie, but I remember it being like a great episode and I really liked your point of view on the movie. Has it changed since then?
I thought for sure that it would. I
Hmm.
thought for sure that I would be like, oh, this movie sucks now, and I see everything that's bad about it. I still think there's a ton of value in this movie, weirdly
Okay.
enough. There's stuff that doesn't hit for me the way it did because I once made the mistake of listening to the Zack Snyder commentary in which he kind of lays out like, no, everything should be taken at face value. And I was like, but I thought the Scott Glenn thing was so subversive. And we could talk about whether or not that matters, death of the author, all that kind of stuff. Because I certainly read it one way, but I don't think that's the way he intended it.
Hmm.
But I was surprised at how much. I mean, there's no story at
No,
all.
No.
There's no
video game.
characterization.
Yeah,
Like it's literally just cool imagery and great looking people. And
beat 'em
sometimes
up.
that's like why I like movies, you know?
It's like an anthology of quests almost with like a
Video game.
host in between. I think for me, seeing it in a theater makes a big difference. I think I was more on board with it back in 2011. I think that's when it came out,
Mhm.
2011. Because I saw it in IMAX and I got the most bang for my buck out of it. And this time I was more fixated on I don't know if this is overstated, but I had a problem for a while where I felt like Hollywood replaced sexualization of female characters with just making them kind of like objectified in a different way with like we don't know how else to do to handle female characters so they don't have interiority, they're just action figures now. And I felt like this was kind of part and parcel to that, where like Scott Glenn is just another man telling them what to do. And it's like there's really no agency on their part other than, just what Zack Snyder is telling his male characters to tell them what to do.
I think that Zach, to Patrick's point, I think that Zack Snyder thinks he's being subversive with that. Is
Yeah.
that Patrick? When you talk about the Scott Glenn character, is that what you mean when you say like you think that
I
that's
don't think he thinks it's subversive. I love the idea of like, here's another man telling them what to do
right?
and offering these terrible empty
Oh
platitudes.
my
And I
God,
was like, oh,
they
he's
never end.
making a commentary on this.
Yeah.
I don't think Zack Snyder is.
Right.
I
I
think
think he
he's,
thinks he's being. I don't know. Yeah, maybe
I
I'm.
don't even know if he thinks he is.
Oh
I
no.
think he
Okay.
might just mean this shit,
Playing it
and that
straight. Yeah.
is a problem. But I think if I'm reading the movie the way I want to, I think it's actually saying something about exactly what you're talking about, Adam, which is like making them into action figures as a replacement for sexuality or eroticism or girl power through giving them guns and swords as
Right.
opposed to lap dances. Like I think there's a lot of interesting stuff we could pick apart in this movie. I just don't know how much of it is intentional.
I like the Abby Cornish character a lot, especially a lot more than like the Emily Browning stuff. And I feel like it's kind of a cheat at the end when they're like, no, this was your story all along. And like, I don't think the movie sets that up well enough. And then at the end, when she's kind of states the theme plainly, where it's like, you have everything that you need. Now go fight. It's like, that's an interesting way. I just wish you dramatized it a little bit better and not as much like you put in a quarter in an arcade game, and that was basically it.
To me, like Zack Snyder, to me, like, and I am the biggest fan. I'm not the biggest fan of Zack Snyder, but I am the biggest fan of let Zack Snyder cook. Like, let him make a big, loud, dumb 4 hour movie. It's going to be not like I like the extended cut of Batman vs Superman. I like Zack Snyder's Justice League. There's things I like in his filmography that are mostly the product of this man cannot be constrained to a three-act structure. You need to just let him go hog wild. So there's a degree to which, as you said, like there's a cinematic quality to this movie. There's a lot of interesting imagery in this movie. You know, again, I could there's lots of things that speak directly to me in this movie in terms of Jenna Malone's character, which I won't dig into. To me, I had a hard time watching this. I watched this earlier today, and I was kind of just like, I feel gross watching this because it does feel exploitative.
It's commendable that it's like the early 2000s frat douche mentality
Yeah.
is sort of being rehabilitated, but it's like the clumsy steps in between where it's like, oh, I'm kind of figuring out that what I was doing was wrong and that I should, or that it was, or I won't just label it wrong, but maybe not as good as it should have been. And I don't know what to do next, but like I'm gonna try this and it's gonna be better and less offensive than the previous.
I don't know. I'm really conflicted on this one. It's not unwatchable. It's not offensive.
Oh.
It's not empty, like you said. It's just to me, it introduces a ton of things that it doesn't really have the grasp to execute well.
Yeah, and there's a couple other things I want to call out that are positives. Like I think Zack Snyder's good at cutting action to music. Like the whole Bjork Army of One is like about as cinematic as it gets, and it's like really you just get kind of caught up into it. There's other sequences that it reminded me of do you remember when we would go to the movies like in the early 2000s and they would have like the Few, the Proud, the Marines and he's fighting like
Yeah.
a lava monster? That's what this movie is basically for 2 hours. And then also this was the same year as Oscar Isaac doing his supporting part in Drive, and it's kind of cool to go back to that and see, like, oh yeah, this is kind of this new actor that can't be denied. Like he's going to be a thing. He's so charismatic, and even though, the character he's playing is tough to stomach.
I feel like I could talk about this movie all day because it's
Yeah.
so messy and fascinating, but I just think I know there's tons of pushback against this movie for being exploitative and for being sexualized and for being empty-headed, but I just kind of don't agree, and I don't think we can point to stuff from the 70s and say that's feminist. Exploitation movies from the 70s and say
Hmm.
that's feminist and point to Sucker Punch and say, but that's sexist. I
It's an
think
interesting point.
it has
Yeah.
more, I think the two things have more in common than just that kind of black or white. This is one thing, this is another. Definitely, it doesn't quite get there with the ideas. And again, the structure is so repetitive and there's no story and like there's a ton of stuff that frustrates me about it, but I think there's a lot of good in it.
Something about it feels um gross, but I do really I feel like I'm wrong when I hear Patrick kind of position like, well, what about the 70s exploitation thing? They're kind of doing the same thing. And I don't feel that way if I'm watching Coffee or Foxy Brown or something like that, just to name a couple of examples. But I don't know why that's the case.
I'm not offended by this movie. I don't think it's offensive. I think the movie is just reaching at something it can't quite get to, which leaves me with just the stuff that feels exploitative. But I do like the idea, and again, just trying to examine myself. Like I'm thinking of the age I was. Like I was, graduating college, and this movie came out, and reflecting on a post late teen period where I was being spoken to in action movies, in mainstream movies as a teenager or as a college student. And
Mhm.
I think now when I watch it, I think of myself at that age and think like, wow, I remember a time when I thought Sucker Punch was really cool, really subversive, really interesting, really empowering. Um, I was such a Buffy kid. Like I think like there's a certain type of intersection between sexual violence, female action, and certain kinds of plots related to that that I feel now are like they feel icky to me.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe that's just maybe baggage that I have to get over. It's totally possible. I don't know. I want to see this movie the way Patrick does. So I want to keep trying.
So I decided that Sucker Punch is coming out of the cell bag because otherwise I would have to go find every 70s exploitation movie I own and sell those too.
If nothing else, it's an incredible audiovisual demo reel.
Sure.
Like it
Yeah.
gives your system a workout.
All right. Well, thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Rob. We will be back this same trio in 2 weeks. We are going to do the flip side of Mean Genes. We're going to do Roger Dodger,
Yep.
where we take a look at three movies that Roger Ebert gave negative reviews to. And we're going to talk about why he gave those negative reviews, if we agree with them, and just kind of our general thoughts on the movies. So we're going to talk about Always,
Hmm?
Double Impact, and Murder at 1600, which I've got a funny story about that. So I went to rent it on Amazon, and you know how like if you hit rent, it usually like will spin for a couple seconds
Hmm?
until like it says play. So as I was doing that, I thought it was like a still photo of Diane Lane, but it wasn't. It was like a scene. And in the so like I hit rent and it's just Diane Lane going like this. And then as it like goes to rent, she's just like, God. And then like Wesley Snipes is just like, and it's just like the cast is telling me, it's like, bro, why'd you rent this? Well, until next time.
These seats are reserved.
Oh, change it up.
You didn't think I would do that, did you?
No, I didn't.